What if I told you that one of the most notorious serial killers in history was never caught? That after over 50 years, his cryptic letters and taunts still haunt us, but his true identity remains a chilling mystery. This isn't just another cold case. It's the story of a killer who played with the media, the police, and the public, all while vanishing into the shadows. Stick around because the story of the Zodiac Killer will send shivers down your spine. The Zodiac Killer. Just saying the name sends a wave of unease through people. This is the story of a killer who terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s, leaving a trail of fear, confusion, and unsolved mysteries. Over the course of his killing spree, he taunted police, sending cryptic letters filled with bizarre ciphers, daring them to catch him. Despite decades of investigation and countless theories, the Zodiac's identity remains unknown. It's one of the most infamous unsolved cases in criminal history, and today we're diving deep into the chilling details of the Zodiac Killer's reign of terror. So buckle up, because this is one story you won't forget. Imagine living in the 1960s, a time when life seemed simpler, safer. Then, one day, everything changes. Out of nowhere, people start turning up dead in the most brutal, terrifying ways. And the worst part? The killer is taunting the public, sending letters to newspapers, and claiming responsibility for more murders than anyone even knew about. And even after all this time, with the advances in forensic science and countless theories put forward, the Zodiac Killer's identity remains a complete mystery. The big question that still haunts everyone to this day is, why? Why was he never caught? Why does his story continue to grip the public's imagination decades later? The Zodiac's first known victims were high school students, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday. On December 20th, 1968, they were parked in a remote area near Vallejo, California. It was a quiet evening, and they probably thought they were safe. But out of nowhere, a man appeared, and within moments they were both dead. The killer shot them in cold blood, and then just disappeared into the night. Authorities had no idea who the killer was, and the town was left in a state of fear. Months later, on July 4th, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time targeting a young couple, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau. They were parked near Blue Rock Springs, another remote location in Vallejo. The Zodiac approached their car and shot them both at close range, then casually walked away, leaving Michael to survive and become one of the few witnesses who could provide a description of the killer. But the Zodiac wasn't done. He sent a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle detailing the attack, and what was even more chilling was the tone of the letter. The killer claimed responsibility for more murders than authorities were even aware of. He even included a symbol, a mysterious cross circle, which would become his signature. Over the next year, the Zodiac would go on to attack two more victims, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Ann Shepard, on September 27th, 1969, near Lake Berryessa. This attack was even more brazen. The Zodiac approached the couple while they were relaxing by the lake, tied them up, and then stabbed them both multiple times. But this time, something even more disturbing happened. The Zodiac, after killing Brian and Cecilia, drew the same symbol on the car door, and then even went as far as to address the police in a letter, boasting about the attack and daring them to catch him. It was clear now. The Zodiac Killer wasn't just some random murderer. He was playing a game with the police and the public, trying to make a name for himself. He wasn't just killing. He was taunting. And with each attack, the mystery grew deeper. His letters, filled with ciphers and riddles, became infamous. He would send them to local newspapers, sometimes with threats, sometimes with puzzles, each one more bizarre than the last. He even promised that if his cipher wasn't solved, he would kill again. One of the most chilling aspects of the Zodiac Killer was his ability to remain a step ahead. Police were left with no clues, no real leads, and no idea who this man was. His ability to blend in with the crowd, to remain a shadow in a sea of people, made him nearly impossible to catch. But the cryptic messages he sent to the newspapers were a different story. Each letter was like a puzzle, one that seemed almost impossible to solve. His infamous 340-character cipher, for example, was never fully decoded during the years of investigation. It wasn't until 2020 that a team of codebreakers cracked it, revealing the message that had been taunting authorities for decades. But even with new breakthroughs in forensic technology, the Zodiac Killer's identity remained elusive. The police had suspects, of course. There were several people who fit the profile of the Zodiac, but none of them could be definitively linked to the crimes. One of the most well-known suspects was Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted child molester who had a history of violent behavior. But despite years of investigation, there was no concrete evidence to tie him to the murders. Then there were the theories. Some believed the Zodiac was a military man, someone with the skills and knowledge to carry out the attacks with such precision. Others thought he might have been someone with a deep psychological need for attention, someone who thrived on the fear he instilled in the public. The truth was, no one knew. The killer's motives remained as cryptic as his letters. Was he a madman, a psychopath, or was there something else driving him? And then there's the moment when everything seemed to change. In 1974, the killings stopped. Just like that, the Zodiac Killer vanished. The public was left with more questions than answers. Some people believed he had died. Others thought he might have been imprisoned for another crime. And still, there were those who speculated that he had simply moved to another area and continued his killing spree under a different identity. Despite all the attempts to crack the case, the Zodiac Killer remained one of the most notorious unsolved criminals in history. As the years passed, his name became synonymous with mystery, and while some of the most chilling ciphers were finally cracked, the one thing that remained out of reach was his identity. Was the Zodiac a man, or could he have been someone else entirely? We may never know. The Zodiac Killer's story is a haunting reminder of how elusive true crime can be. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, countless investigations, and new technologies, this killer was never caught. His identity remains one of the most disturbing mysteries in criminal history. While some have moved on to other cases, the Zodiac's name still lingers in the minds of those who remember his reign of terror. It's a case that proves just how terrifying the unknown can be, and how even the most chilling killers can slip through the cracks of justice. If you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and keep the chills coming.